Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the Land Use Committee of Community Board 8. Let's give our fellow committee members an opportunity to get online. We do not have enough members present to make quorum, and it is my hope that we shortly will be in such a position. So just stand by. Good evening, everyone. We're just waiting for a few more members to join us so that we might achieve quorum. Welcome to the Land Use Meeting, November 2022.
You hear me by any chance? Am I heard? I see people talking. Am I hearing other people? You hear me?
Yes, Quasi, I can hear you.
Now I hear you. Before I wasn't hearing you. Okay, thank you. Look, you look like you were talking, trying to talk, and I just saw words coming out, but no sound. But we're good now. Thank you.
Okay. So I just asked Miss Neal or Miss George, would you be so kind enough to take roll to see if we are actually at quorum at this juncture?
Not a problem.
Thank you so much, Ms. Neal.
Albert Appleton, Lisa Atkinson, Princess Ben James, Jock Brunville, Robert Callahan,
Here.
Nora Daniel, Michael Francoeur.
Here.
Thank you. Najani Granville, Karen Gray.
Here.
Zerzima Jordan.
Here.
Peter Crashes.
Here.
Kadra Cool. Nicole Lemla.
Here.
Miss Lem, how do you pronounce your last name properly, please?
Lemle.
Lemla. Okay, I was close enough. Lemla.
Thank you.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Here.
Thank you. Kwasi Mensa.
Here.
Mimi Mitchell. Fior Ortiz.
Present.
Thank you. Jack Robinson.
I'm here, but my wife and I are sharing the same screen, so both of us are there if that matters.
Nope, no problem. Thank you for letting us know, Mr. Robinson. Kim Robinson. Mark Thurton. Ethel Tyus. Gib Vaconi.
Here.
Irsa Weatherspoon. Sharon Wedderburn.
Here.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein. Deborah Young.
Here.
Thank you.
Jennifer Jordan here.
Oh, Miss Jordan, I was told you were going to be
Yeah, but I'm on the road.
excused.
Yeah, but I'm on the road. I wasn't sure.
Johnny Granville is here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And Miss Granville, I will put you here. And that brings you, Miss Wedderburn, to 15 present. You need one more to reach quorum because you have exactly 30 members now.
Okay, thank you for that.
No problem.
May I ask, are the applicants for 538 Carlton with us? Please unmute yourself. Now that is interesting. All right, we're waiting for one member to join us so that we might have quorum. I just wanted to share with you that in addition to reviewing the application for 538 Carlton Avenue, we're also going to continue our discussion on the ULIP application for 962 Pacific. So given it's 6:22, we're going to give 3 more minutes for someone to join us. And please, if you are representing 538 Carlton Avenue, please let us know you're present. Okay. This is the most silent I've ever heard this committee. Somebody want to share some good news in the interim? Anything that we should be paying attention to?
Ms. Wedderburn, I actually had a question, if that's okay.
I'm offering the opportunity to ask a question.
Cool. I wanted to know what the outreach is for an applicant. While we're waiting for them, what do we do to make sure that they know that the meeting's happening?
They're in communication with the board office. The board, they've provided materials regarding this for this particular application to the committee. So I can confirm that they are aware of this meeting. Ms. Neal is on the line and she generally handles that. Would you like to add anything to that, Ms. Neal?
Sure. To answer your question, Mr. Callahan, as soon as the applicant lets the district office know that they have an upcoming application, whether it's for LPC, a BSA, DCP, what have you, we actually create a notice form. It's not a generalized notice form in the least bit. It is specific for each applicant. It's emailed to them. Any of the neighborhood organizations, in this particular applicant's case, it's both PHNDC and the North Prospect Heights Association. They are CC'd on the email with the information going out. Applicants are required to post a minimum, we ask, of 7 days in advance in the surrounding community, definitely on the neighboring properties, as well as those abutting the backyard of their hearing date. Not only is the Land Use Committee information on this posted notification form, it's also the information for the full board meeting is also on this form. In addition to that, we post it to our website, to Twitter, to Instagram, and our Facebook pages.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Julia. Julia, I see Kaja Koo has joined us.
Okay, and if that is the case, then you will have exactly 51% of your members present for a quorum.
Okay, so now the query remains. Thank you, Ms. Kuhl. Now we have quorum. Thank you. Is the applicant for 538 Carlton Avenue present, or is their representative present?
Ms. Wedderburn, it looks like Mr. Conti is trying to raise his hand, but he may be having audio trouble.
Okay,
It looks like he may be the representative.
thank you very much.
You hear
Thank you,
me?
Ms. Ortiz. We can
Hello?
now hear you, sir.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. I was trying to call in and reconnect, but I think I figured it out. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, so the committee is ready to hear the presentation for 538 Carlton Avenue, which is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. You may begin, sir.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for your time. I had sent the plans, but I can open them. I can share them here if you would like as well.
Please share them.
Okay. All right, let me know if everyone can see the screen.
I see it.
Okay, great. So yes, we are the architects that have been hired to renovate building at 538 Carlton Avenue. And we've submitted our application to Community Board 8 and have been working with the Landmarks department for at the staff level before kind of finalizing this presentation. And our idea is to essentially keep the building as is and restore some of the original details and elements of the building, architectural elements. We do not plan on adding any massing to the building. We are planning on two kind of small updates where we've indicated as new building elements. The first one is a bulkhead for stairs that goes to the roof, which is required by code, being that this is an alteration type 1. We are required to bring stairs to the roof for egress and life safety purposes. And those are highlighted here in yellow. We've sloped the proposed bulkhead to minimize visibility, to just have the minimum headroom clearance allowed to bring a very small bulkhead up to the roof. In addition, we are proposing some small window updates. Currently, there are two very small square windows at this ground level behind the fence. We're proposing to match the windows of the upper floors here to help bring more light into this room, which was very dark from these two small windows. As well as you can see here, we have a close-up of this photo. We have this kind of very small window here. We're proposing to match the existing windows at the ground level. And in the rear facade, we have, this is actually done at Landmark staff level. So we have a new entrance at the back, a railing at the existing roof terrace, as well as a new railing to protect at the new roof, which currently there is none. We had our client do so you kind of see the existing building section, the proposed showing the roof level with lines of sight, and we had our client do a mock-up of this bulkhead with orange netting as Landmarks requires, showing the new railing that would go around the roof, as well as the stair bulkhead that would be at the roof. And we've taken some photos from the street, so you can kind of see a little bit of the orange netting peeking over from the corner here, a little bit from this view here. We're showing the railing that would be proposed, and it would be an open railing at the current roof terrace, which has no fall protection currently. From the corner of the building, it's a little obscured with the tree, but it was the immediate corner. We don't see much of the roof or railing at all because of the high cornice, and as well from back here, trees were obscuring it a bit, but we're seeing a little bit of the railing back of the bulkhead from this view. So again, our idea is to well, client's idea is to create 4 residential units here. And as I mentioned, we're not looking to add any bulk or new, a new floor on the building. We're not looking to extend the building in the back. We're essentially trying to keep the building in character as it is, restore some of the brick molds, the old wood brick molds around the windows, clean the brick, repair and repaint the cornice where necessary. Same with the stoop. We're going to be cleaning and repainting the historic fence and gate around the property. And the only new areas, as I mentioned, are these 2 new windows and the stair bulkhead to the roof, which is required by code. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions or go into further detail if anyone would like.
So just a couple of things. I see that Mary Shuford is on the call from Prospect Heights Neighborhood Development Corp. Can you share what you've said about this, what your organization has discussed about this particular dwelling?
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to unmute myself. We haven't met, although a few of us have officially met and discussed this, but a few of us have reviewed the plans and have a few questions. Just one of them, what color are you planning to repaint the fencing at the ground level? I notice now it's a light color.
Yeah, as of now, it looks like it's been painted over quite a bit. So it's, from the historic photos, it's a little bit hard to tell because they're unfortunately in black and white.
Yeah.
So we're going to be continuing to work with the Landmark staff to see if we can find a bit more information and detail on this and guidance on what color to paint them.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed is that the roof railing and the bulkhead are much more visible as you go up Carlton Avenue toward Bergen Street and above, and this is with the trees. I noticed that you're
Yeah, so
planning,
here, my guess is you're talking about from here, from Carlton Avenue.
right? And if you go further up Carlton Avenue, above below Dean, the further up you go, the more visible it is.
Okay. Yeah, we've looked at, and with some other possibilities of how to kind of blend this in and minimize it. The current mock-up, one thing that's important to note, and I believe it was actually today was the day they were changing it. The current mock-up in these photos was originally straight, and working with Landmark staff, they had asked us to slope this bulkhead.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, it was just straight across. So this slope is actually a very recent update. And they have, as of today, I will confirm, but we're going to go back and retake the photos because this was just adjusted in the mock-up either late yesterday or this afternoon. So we're going back either tomorrow or over the weekend to retake the photos, and there'll be more leaves off the trees. We've also been requested to take photos a little bit further down the streets as well from Landmarks.
Okay, and it looks like you're planning to use a limestone color stucco on the bulkhead.
Correct, yes.
And black paint on the railings.
That is the plan for now, yes, correct.
And I guess some of the wood structures will also be sort of darker. I'm just wondering if the railings could be made lighter. I mean, there's an awful lot of mass of railing up there.
Yeah, we have no issue with that. We can try and blend it in as a light color so it blends in with the bulkhead and the sky during the daytime a bit better.
Yeah,
we're very open to that.
Gib, did you have any comments?
I do. I mean, but why don't you finish and I'll wait for the chair to call on me here.
Oh, okay. I think I've kind of gone over my questions or comments, so.
Okay, yeah, noted. Again, I like the suggestion of making the railing lighter. I think it does. I think it might help with the visibility from the street.
Now, just for the sake of continuity as well, in order for you to be recognized by the chair, the normal process is to raise your hand. And given I don't, and Ms. Ortiz Joyner, okay. If I don't see any other raised hand at this moment besides Mr. Vacconi, for the sake of continuity on comment, please go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say that from a procedural point of view at PHNDC, our landmarks committee, it typically requires 10 days of notice for a special meeting to review a COA. So that's why sometimes we have not met by the time we get together at a Community Board 8 land use committee meeting. In this case, we did not have enough notice to give 10 days to our committee to have a meeting. Now, speaking as a member of the committee here, I have a couple questions. First of all, is the purpose of the railing at the roof simply to allow that space to be used as occupiable space with, with a deck? And if so, who will be using the deck? Is that for all tenants in the building?
Currently, we have that on our plans, and currently there is no fall protection from the roof. So if you were to go up on the roof, which we had when we initially surveyed the building, someone could essentially just fall off. So there is a building code life safety concern, which is why we have to create
that concern wouldn't be present if it wasn't occupiable space.
Well, no, yes and no. By code, we have to bring, because this building is 4 stories and over 40 feet, building code requires us to bring an egress stair to the roof in the event that fire blocks the main exit out. Fire department can send a ladder to the roof, and it's an area of refuge. Because the stair extends to the roof, by default, you must provide 42-inch guardrails or fall protection around any area that's accessible to tenants, the public, etc. So we would not be able to essentially follow code correctly. It just wouldn't pass because we have to have the stair go up to the roof for that reason.
Okay, and the reason that the stair is going up to the roof is because you're subdividing to 4 units?
No, even if this was a wide open building and they said no tenant access, we still would require this railing around because this is a fire egress stair, and every building that's 4 stories or over 40 feet, whichever is less, requires stairs going to the roof that have to be accessible.
We get lots of COAs in Alt 1s in the historic district. And we even have bulkheads going to the roof, but we don't have rails all the way around the roof and all of those.
Are there existing parapets or existing structure that maybe protects it? Because code does require any accessible, even if it was off limits to tenants completely.
But Mr. Conti,
I just want to make sure we're clear on this, though. What gives rise to needing to build the bulkhead with stair access to the roof? Because that's not present in all applications we see.
Again, every building is different. So you might have a building that's under 40 feet, and that falls under a different requirement with the stairs. They could have a roof hatch, let's say, going to the roof instead of the stairs. Once you surpass 40 feet or 4 stories, I can open up the building code if you would like.
And Mr. Conti, this question arises because this building has been habitable and has been inhabited for at least 50 years, to my personal knowledge, and there was no need for a railing. So the
Correct.
question really
It was subdivided into several apartments illegally, and there was only a hatch to the roof with a ladder.
So this is not the conversion of a legal 3-family to a 4-family dwelling? Is that what you're saying? Because essentially what Mr. Vicconi is asking, is the addition of a bulkhead the trigger for the railing? That's the
Yes.
specific
Well,
question.
and actually what
Yes.
I'm asking is, what's the trigger for the bulkhead? Because we have lots of buildings in the historic district that file applications with the Department of Buildings for, significant remodeling and don't get called upon to put a bulkhead on the roof. Would
Okay.
a 2-family structure be required to put the bulkhead on the roof?
It again depends on the height.
Okay, but we have lots of 4-story buildings in the district that go through COAs and do significant renos. I live in one of them, and they don't get called upon to put a bulkhead on the roof. It's not an everyday occurrence. So what's triggering this one? Why are you getting this here?
I'm going to share a different screen. 1 second. And this was okay. Again, so going through our building plan exam, this is code section 1009.13, and it deals with means of egress. So stairway to roof and roof access. In buildings 4 or more stories or more than 40 feet in height above grade, one stairway shall extend to the roof surface through a stairway bulkhead complying with 1509.2, unless the roof has a slope steeper than 20 degrees. Now, that's also possible that the existing roof has a very steep slope, which some of these old buildings did, and then you don't have to provide a bulkhead.
Not really, that wouldn't be typical in brownstones.
No, that's not. That's very atypical. Correct.
Yeah. So does this section of the code apply to? I'm sorry, I don't want to drag us down too much here, but I do really want to get to the bottom of this.
No, for sure.
In terms of the need for the rail. Is this applicable to all building types or only buildings greater than 3-family, or what's your understanding?
This is applicable to alteration type 1s and new buildings. New building construction and alt 1s. Alt 2s, this would not be applicable.
So a building that's having interior renovations and windows and
this would not apply.
Change of rooms. Okay. So so let's cut to the chase on this one then. What triggers the alt 1 here?
This building is the C of O on this building is 2 apartments and a rectory with a rectory or pastor's apartment on the first floor.
So you're going from effectively a 3-family building to a 4-family building.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, that's the answer. So I appreciate you bearing with me and answering.
No problem. I'm happy to
getting to that. I want to observe that I don't believe that we have in the Prospect Heights Historic District that we've had an application that puts a railing around the roof that's visible from a public thoroughfare. We have had applications that have been approved that have a railing around a terrace, like you're showing in the back, that have been approved
on the lower,
and those are in place. But I don't know of any that show a rail around the roof. And it's visible from a public thoroughfare. That's a much more, to me, that's a much more sort of intrusive feature of the project than the other aspects you've introduced. The windows at the basement level and the rail around the terrace at the extension, I don't think, again, I understand why you're getting there, but we often get into issues of precedence here, and I feel like if we were to have a rail like this at the roof, I understand it's necessary because of your alt one now, but it's also, you know, sort of facilitating a roof deck for the tenants on the top of the building as well. We would potentially be in the future entertaining other applications from applicants who also would like a roof deck on their building and would have a railing visible from a public thoroughfare like this.
If I can make a suggestion, I've got the annotate button. Let's see if it works. We have a little space because again, we're required this 6 foot wide FDNY path, and we have a little space here and here. We could potentially pull this railing back on all sides to be more inward.
And do you think you could get it past the sight lines from the public thoroughfare?
As much as possible, with moving this kind of 6 foot FDNY path completely within essentially this area. So this would be our 6 foot FDNY path.
Right.
And you know, the more you pull a railing into the sight lines tend to disappear a bit. You know, we're open to trying something like this to see how it looks with the mock-up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. The next people that shall be speaking will be Mr. Peter Crashes and Ms. Frances Langley. Peter?
Yeah, thanks. I just to the question of notice, I posted a notice of the meeting to the email group of the MP North Prospect Heights Association Community Development Committee. I reached out to the different property owners of the co-op owners in 560 Carlton, excuse me, Dean, that are around the corner. Also to some people on Carlton Avenue, including the person who I believe administers the Carlton Avenue email group. And actually no comments came back, so I just wanted to pass that on. And the email, excuse me, the notices did go up on at least on the adjacent buildings in a timely way. Actually, my only real observation is just this is just a request that as the work is happening, this particular site has had a real big problem with rats coming out of the garage for years and years. In fact, the borough president, who is now the mayor, stood right in front of it and took a look at the rat runs coming out of the garage. So I think you know, as you're moving forward, just maybe pass on to the property owner to stay on top of that, and even I don't know what the condition is now, but in that area, just to take a peek now and see if there's any problems. But that'd just be my single comment. But
okay, definitely noted. Yeah, and I'm sure once construction starts, that will be priority number one for them to take care of that.
Thank you.
Ms. Langley?
Yes, good afternoon. I have two questions. Is this a landmark building? And my second question is the window that you're going to put downstairs. You have one window down there now. Is that going to become two windows? Is that serving two different apartments or just one apartment?
That is serving one apartment. I will open up the plan. So here, it's essentially for this bedroom. So right now we have this bedroom down here on the ground level, but it was just a very, very small window. So that would be serving one room, one apartment.
Okay.
And sorry, can you remind me your first question again?
Is this a landmark building?
Yes. The building is not landmark, but it's within obviously the Prospect Heights Historic District. But the building itself is not a landmark, individual landmark.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langley. Are there any questions from those assembled? Any more questions I should ask? All right, seeing no raised hands nor hearing any voices, I would entertain a motion on this issue.
Sorry, Chair Wedderburn, I raised my hand a little late, but I do have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Ortiz Joyner.
The 4 apartments, are they going to be co-ops, condos? What's the makeup?
They're going to be rental apartments.
And is there a need to have roof access? Does there need to be a terrace? Can you rent these apartments without terraces?
I'm assuming our client would prefer to have roof access, given that it's something that's allowed by the city. But that wouldn't, going back to kind of the earlier conversation, it wouldn't eliminate the bulkhead or the stairs because that's a separate egress fire department code requirement.
Why not fire escapes?
That's not allowed under the new code, the new building code.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for your Jack.
Hi, are any of the units there affordable?
No, being such a small development, there will be market rate units.
Okay, I am again looking. I see no other raised hands. Ms. Ortiz Joyner, keep me honest if I've missed any. And Mr. Robinson, do you still have a question? Oh, you have another question because your hand is still raised?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion on the matter of a certificate for appropriateness for 538 Carlton Avenue.
Hi, this is Gib. I'd like to make a motion. I, as I said, don't have objection to most of the elements of this project, but I would not like to see a precedent created where we have a visible railing on the roof of a building, again, visible from a public thoroughfare in the historic district. So I would like to move that the committee withhold support for the application pending a modification that would reduce the area that the railing is, or that would have the railing recede from the parapet so that it is not visible from a public thoroughfare.
Ortiz Joyner, I second that.
Okay. Mr. Crane, I should have asked this question at the outset. Are you currently calendared?
My understanding, I believe, is this application will be heard at the Landmarks Commission on November 22nd. Mary, is that correct?
Yes, that's what I saw on the schedule today.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Crane, would you have the opportunity to be able to prove to the committee or the general body at large? Mr. Conti?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said somebody else.
No.
So yes, we can request that this present this modification to our clients, adjust the mock-up, and go back and take new site photos that show the railing receded from the extents of the parapet wall to see the improvement from there.
Okay, so I will tell you that time is of the essence because our meeting is next week, Thursday.
We can have it done by then. Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, Mr. Vacconi, could you restate your motion, and then Ms. Neal, will you please call the roll?
The motion is that the committee withhold support for the application pending a modification that would have the railings at the roof recede so they are no longer visible from a public thoroughfare.
Thank you. Ms. Ortiz Joyner, you are the second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Neal, will you please call the roll?
Albert Appleton, Lisa Atkinson, Princess Ben James, Jock Brunville,
Yes.
Yes.
Robert Callahan,
I have to answer this roll call.
Julia, can you begin again, please?
not a problem.
Thank you.
Albert Appleton, Lisa Atkinson, Princess Ben James.
Yes.
Thank you, Miss James. Jock Brunville,
Yes.
Thank you. Robert Callahan.
Yes.
Thank you. Nora Daniel.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Francoeur.
Yep.
Thank you. Najani Granville.
Yes.
Thank you. Karen Gray.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter Crashes.
Yes.
Thank you. Kaja Cool.
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole Lemla.
Yes.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Yes.
Thank you. Quasi Menza.
Yes.
Thank you. Where did my screen go? Sorry. And it's doing it again. Apologies, everyone. Just give me one moment. I hit the wrong button. Thank you, Mr. Menza. Mimi Mitchell.
Yes.
Thank you. Fior Ortiz.
Yes.
Thank you. Jack Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Kim Robinson. Hello, who is breaking through, please? Kim Robinson. Mark Thurton. Ethel Tyus. Gib Viconi.
Yes.
Thank you. Irsa Weatherspoon. Sharon Wedderburn.
Yes.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein. Deborah Young.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously with 20 in favor.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you all. Mr. Conti, if you are unsure about your next steps, kindly reach out to Community Board 8, and the full board will be meeting next Thursday.
Okay, great. I will have that resubmitted before then. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And Mr. Conti, please be aware that next week's meeting is in person only, and it will be at Crown Heights Apartments located at 1055 St. John's Place.
Okay, are we required to have someone there for the vote?
I would advise so to answer questions.
Okay, no problem. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Bye.
You're welcome. So before we proceed with the presentation for 962 Pacific, we have two callers on the line that we'd like to identify. Could you please unmute yourself and tell us who you are? So I would like to start with the phone number that begins with area code 215 and ends with the digit 65. We'd like to welcome you to our meeting. Can you please tell us who you are? Okay, not hearing any response from that particular caller. So we'd like to proceed to the next item, which is a continuation of our preliminary discussion regarding 962 Pacific. Who might I ask will begin the presentation on behalf of this project?
Hi, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel.
Mr. Lobel, proceed.
Thank you, Chair Wedderburn. Good evening, members of the committee. Again, Richard Lobel. I'm joined by the applicant team, and in the interest of time, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. We basically wanted to come back after the last hearing and talk about some very targeted issues. So by way of a brief introduction, again, this is with regards to a rezoning application on Pacific Street between Grand and Classen Avenues. This is for a rezoning from an existing M11 district to an MX district, which would allow for M14 R7A development. We presented last time to the committee. We demonstrated several things. First of all, the duration of the application, how long we had been in line at city planning dating back to 2019, that there had been other applicants who had been seen, heard, and decided upon since the time of our rezoning application being submitted. And importantly, that this was one of 25 lots on the south side of Pacific between Grand and east of Classen. And of those 25 lots, 24 of those lots are zoned with R7A or R7A equivalent zoning. This is the only one that is not so zoned. So one of the comments that was raised at the last hearing was with regards to environmental concerns, and specifically what this application would do to a larger M-Crown rezoning. And so with that, I introduced Kevin Williams. Kevin is a principal at Equity Environmental, who is well able to discuss with great particularity the effects that this rezoning proceeding would have upon a larger rezoning. Not only would it not have an impact or have no negative impact, but would in essence positively impact that rezoning going forward for reasons which Kevin can discuss. He will also discuss some additional comments that were raised at the last hearing. And finally, Nadine Olsner is here, who can talk to some of the other points raised, and the entire applicant team is happy to answer questions. Again, we don't want to reopen the last presentation. We're really here more to keep in touch with the community board and answer with regards to some specific concerns. So with that, I would turn it over to Kevin Williams.
Thank you, Richard. Can everybody hear me clearly? Great. So last time I was before this board, I, kind of offered some, advice regarding a neighborhood plan. So I'm delighted to see that that has occurred, that this community board is finally getting its long desired neighborhood plan for the M-Crown district. And what I would like to focus on basically is how a private rezoning, this last private rezoning filed last year, would fit into that analysis, and also to capture sort of where we're at. So the environmental review has basically been put on hold. It was literally in the last stages before getting certified. And so, should, some support come from this board to allow it to move forward, it would likely be certified within months, which means the environmental assessment would be complete, which has basically been ongoing in a staggered way through COVID for the last 2.5 to 3 years. So how does a private rezoning interface with a neighborhood plan and with an environmental impact statement associated with an area-wide rezoning or neighborhood plan? It happens all the time. You often, the reason why is there are often private rezonings that otherwise catalyze a community to say, hey, let's look at this holistically. There's a lot of private development activity. This area needs an area plan. So it's often common that you'll have the trailings or the end private rezonings occurring while an area-wide rezonings going on board. City Environmental Quality Review, which is the process that subjects an area-wide rezoning or a private rezoning to environmental review, dictates how an area-wide rezoning considers cumulatively projected future development contemplated under privately sponsored rezonings. So you have a lot of privately sponsored rezonings that have occurred over the last 4 to 5 years. 2 of them are currently nearly complete and coming out of the ground. So none of the private rezonings that have occurred in the M-Crown district over the last 5 to 6 years are actually out of the ground. The only rezonings that sort of ring the entire M-Crown area are area-wide rezonings, and none of those have mandatory inclusionary housing. So the only ones that have been approved by this community board or otherwise approved by city council are in fact private rezonings that have created MIH. And so in this case of this rezoning, the idea is that you have to include any rezoning or any as of right development in an area-wide rezoning that has not otherwise been built yet. And you have to use what are called projected development sites that are defined, and there's only one in this case, and it's the 962 Pacific site that would be included in the analysis. And I want to talk about how that's included, and to assure this board that somehow by doing a private rezoning, it's circumventing getting considered in a neighborhood or EIS, environmental impact statement process. So the idea is an environmental assessment has to consider 3 timeframes: existing condition, the future with the proposed action, and the future in the absence of the proposed action. And here, for the neighborhood plan, you probably have a 15 to 20 year build year, something like 2035, to basically consider all the development coming online. This development, if it were approved within the next 7, 8, 9 months, would not come online for, say, three more years. So the idea is it has to be included in the analysis framework of the environmental impact statement. And so projects that are not yet built but are forecast to be built in the future are considered in the analysis of environmental impacts. As of right projects, the development pipeline and approved rezonings must be considered in the future action and the future in absence of the proposed action. And that's how you evaluate things. The future without the action and the net increment or the increment of development, whatever it may be, and the individuals and the residents and the various, population that's projected to be forecasted to come out of the residential development from rezonings. And so the idea is that analysis related to traffic, community facilities, schools, socioeconomics, open space, air quality, urban design, shadows, solid waste and sanitation, energy, water and sewer infrastructure must all consider as of yet constructed buildings contemplated in privately sponsored rezonings. And what I'd like to just explain is how, how is that done? So just to give an example, community facilities in elementary school. So here you establish the existing conditions. There's this thing called the Department of Education Blue Book, and it indicates both current enrollment, utilization, capacity, school seats for each public school. So I'm not talking about private schools, I'm not talking about charter schools, public schools. And it basically indicates, based off of demographic data and the experience of DOE, what the projected school capacity is. And then the idea is they also have projections out to 5 and 10 years. So the first thing you do in this analysis for either a private rezoning environmental assessment or environmental impact statement is you identify, so say it's a K-6 school. Identify the number of K-6 students forecast to be generated from approved private rezoning development by the build year. So anything that doesn't have development out of the ground, and even recent development that's come out of the ground, will be deducted from the current capacity. Then identify the number of K-6 students forecast to be generated from DOB pipeline, identify future enrollment, capacity, and utilization based off of the DOE Blue Book forecast. Then you identify school construction authority pipeline projects. So those capital projects, so say there's a new school, say there's an expansion of capacity in the area, that would be added. And so the idea is it's A plus B, is you're adding students forecasted from private rezonings that are yet built. You're adding students forecast from DOB pipeline that are basically listed on the DOB website that are going to be built, that are permitted. And then you subtract the capacity and the capital improvements coming online. And that indicates whether or not the district has the capacity to handle the incoming student population. And then finally, the step 3 of this process is you basically then overlay the area-wide rezoning with that reduced capacity or otherwise adjusted capacity of all of these what are called no-build projects or no-action projects. So, say you have 6,000 students identified in the M-Crown, or sorry, 6,000 residents identified, which comes up to be 750 students, and 350 of those are the K-6 grade. Those would then be added to the no action to determine whether or not you don't have enough capacity. And if you don't have enough capacity, then you have to identify mitigation. And that would be part of the land use framework. You would accord areas and you would make it a part of the policy to establish or identify those school seats. That's how you kind of use the environmental assessment to inform your neighborhood planning efforts. How many students are needed in the area. That same process follows for, say, sewer capacity or traffic. And it's different from a bunch of individual rezonings. And so the unique aspect of a neighborhood plan is all of these things that this board's been concerned about, these individual rezonings that don't cumulatively take into impact on each one of the private rezonings. Your neighborhood plan solves all of that, because all of these unrealized and buildings that are just coming out of the ground will have to go into the capacity analysis for the area-wide rezoning. So in sewer capacity, all these new buildings, all of those that are projected by the private rezonings will draw down from the identified capacity in your sewer treatment facility, as well as factor into CSO or combined sewer overflow. So, when you get major storms and that sort of thing, all of the additional overflow that comes from additional new development have to be incorporated into that environmental impact statement. And why Richard mentioned this notion that this actually assists city planning and their selected consultant in performing the analysis is They don't have to go to each one of these sites and speculate about the development. They already have a development framework that maxes things out. It's identified the number of residents. In some cases, it's identified the sewer outfalls, the water utilization, the traffic generation. So all of that data, it can assist and facilitate your consultant, and they will have to refer to these documents and include them in the analysis. So anyway, same form concept, whether it's open space, park utilization, you have an open space deficit in this area. All of the sort of uncompleted rezonings in the area and potential development and projected development coming from a neighborhood rezoning would have to be included. And so, in this case, just to apply it here, your M-Crown neighborhood plan environmental impact statement would establish the existing condition, assuming you're starting now, the baseline's the 2020 census. It's great. We have unique original census. And then you would have to add on top Grandin Pacific rezoning, projected development site 1, that is near completion. 1010 Pacific rezoning, projected development site 1, that is near completion, on top of 2020 census, as well as any additional development coming online that may not be accounted for in the census, and that will come online before the rezoning's done. And then the second step, that's your existing condition. Second step, future no action. As of yet, unconstructed development coming from the various private rezonings, Grand Pacific rezoning, projected development site 2, 1050 Pacific projected development sites, 1034 Atlantic projected development sites, 809 Atlantic, 849, 840 Atlantic, 870 to 88 Atlantic, 1045 Atlantic, as well as any identified DOB pipeline projects that are listed on their website, as well as ambient growth tracked from the census, have to establish what's called the future no action scenario. And then from there, that's basically your background condition. That's already drawing down from all the services on all the technical areas in the EA. And then you add basically on top of that, the projections from the neighborhood rezoning. And just to kind of put the M-Crown in, I'm sure you all have very good mapping for your district, but the area in red shows the project site, roped on either end by R7As, R7D on the corner of Grandin Pacific, the C63As that are on Atlantic, the R7A that's facing us across the street on Pacific Street. Yeah, that gives you the context. This is showing the site within the context of the M-Crown framework. So this is designated as an MX. It's consistent with the rezonings that have come before this board, identical with those that are present on this block. And finally, one of the points here, and I've heard it from this board before throughout the city, concerns about upzones. All of these rezonings that are surrounding the site that have accrued over the last 2 decades, and of course there's additional rezoning to the left that was approved a while back. All of these, none of these have mandatory inclusionary housing. So these private rezonings are the only ones that have been approved in the area and that affect the M-Crown district that do not have or that offer inclusionary housing, and in some cases deep affordability. So that's all that I wanted to touch on. I think Nadine, if you wanted to remark on the ground floor potentially about the programming. You're muted, Nadine.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. In closing, we just wanted to take a few minutes to follow up on a couple of things that were raised last time we were here. This slide should look familiar to you, as it is the proposed ground floor plan of the building. First, we heard from several people last time that open space access is an ongoing concern in the neighborhood. Obviously, with our small site, we aren't going to be able to solve the problem alone, but we are excited to be part of the solution. You can see we are offering 2 different garden spaces for this building, a children's garden for the Early Childhood Educational Center, as well as a residential garden. And we would be open to working with the community board on ways to open and make available these spaces for community use. We look forward to continuing that conversation as our application progresses. Second, mention that we are speaking to daycare and educational providers about the Early Childhood Center. We will continue to progress those conversations so that after certification, we have a partner or two identified to help operate the space. However, in the interim, we want to make sure that if anyone has any suggestions for operators, please step forward, that you think would be a good fit. Please let us know. And please don't be shy about sending referrals our way. We welcome the input. On the last slide, finally, I wanted to connect with a number of you one-on-one who expressed interest in doing so. This final slide has my contact info. Please do not hesitate to be in touch with me in the coming weeks and months. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. I'm going to now turn it back to Richard for final thoughts and next steps.
Thanks, Nadine, and thanks to you, Chair, and the committee. Again, we're happy that Kevin was able to join us to talk about these issues which have been raised. The entire applicant team is here and available. Again, we value the committee's input. We think that we're moving in a positive direction and look forward to hopefully coming to an understanding with regards to our application. And with that, we open it up for questions.
So, so the chair takes the prerogative to call on those who are going to speak. So the first person who's going to speak is Mr. Callahan, followed by Mr. Robinson.
And Ms. Wedderburn, if you had questions before, I'm happy to cede to you, but I've got a couple. So
I'm good.
Okay. I really would personally benefit and think that others would personally benefit from like a restatement of the thesis of Mr. Williams's presentation, because I'll tell you that personally, what I understood from what you were trying to convey was that this development, allowing this development to move forward, would increase the intensity of the need that was determined from the environmental impact study that would be conducted by a neighborhood-wide rezoning. That if you were allowed to develop this property, that it would have to be entered as part of the consideration of future needs for the district. Is that what you were conveying to us? Or did I miss some of the nuance there?
Yeah, Robert, I'm sorry. And honestly, I apologize not being able to listen on the last hearing. And I'm not exactly certain what the concerns were. But my understanding is there was a concern that if this rezoning was to go forward, it would not be considered, it would make the area-wide rezoning more ineffectual. And this constitutes 2% of the area, and the area-wide rezoning 3%. So my point was that not only is this environmental assessment individually assessing the unique impact of this project, which it does, and it's went into great detail in doing so, but it also has to be considered in the area-wide rezoning. And the third point was that the data generated, if this project goes through, is available for the city to use in terms of setting the framework analysis for the environmental impact statement for the neighborhood plan. So this notion that somehow by perhaps moving forward with private application, it complicates the processing of an EIS, an area-wide EIS is not the case. And that this application has been evaluated and on its own merits. And there are folks on this board who I have listened to for the past many years who indicated an actually valuable and thoughtful concern that individual environmental assessments, private applications, do not cumulatively assess one another. Meaning, if you have 3 or 4 private rezonings, they're only individually evaluated. So what I'm suggesting is that your neighborhood plan cures a lot of that concern, because a lot of the private rezonings, actually none of them that have occurred in the M Crown district have actually produced residents yet. So the idea is your neighborhood plan is going to capture all of that potential development. And I think it's very important that you're able to get DCP on board with doing an M-Crown plan, because I've been working in this area for 7 years, and it's been at least 10 since this has been contemplated. So no, I wasn't. What I was trying to say is, this environmental assessment stands on its own merits, and the EIS for the neighborhood plan will include all of the development that's been as of yet unrealized, and will properly assess the impact of all this potential development in the future.
Okay, I think that point is well taken, but for your purposes and quite frankly for the applicant's purposes as well, I will at least convey what I understood the objection to be, which is not necessarily with the. I think that there is an important thing to say about the cumulative impact of environmental impact that is not considered by individual applications. But the concern was, in fact, that by approving an individual application after a very public declaration by the council member that no more ULURP applications would be processed until after the neighborhood-wide rezoning was conducted, severely undermines the impact and the urgency for a neighborhood-wide rezoning, especially in an environment that is so pro-development. And you may disagree with some of the things I said, but
I understand, and so I can sort of rebut that. I do not think that the council member or this board was aware that there was a filed application. It's been filed since last year. We were informed when we started this application that the M-Crown would not move forward. The applicant has deposited countless hours of blood and money to try to get this through. And the fact is that the site can either lie fallow, be converted to an M11 use like a last mile facility, so that the Olsners can actually get some productive use and not just bleed money. And you have to think about that as well. M11 is still a valid use present here, and you're trying to rezone your area. And so having to wait, 3 years, 4 years for your EIS to get done, then the inevitable lawsuit that will occur that happened on every single rezoning, the Gowanus, Inwood, Bushwick, which got killed, which was a neighborhood sponsored plan. So the risk here is you have everything in your court as the board. You can ask for certain benefits related to this. This is substantially compliant with precisely the M-Crown plan that you've been planning for years. So to keep this site offline when you're likely to rezone it to exactly what the Olsners are hoping to do, to me, basically just continues to keep an unproductive, vacant piece of land that will be included in the environmental assessment. It doesn't, at this point, you have one application filed and left that basically was contemporaneous with the other applications that were approved on Atlantic Avenue. And what we're suggesting is that allowing one more application through, city planning is informing everybody, and I've been involved in another one that's been killed because it wasn't filed, basically directly behind this site. I don't think disturbs this notion that, you're going to basically put a moratorium on private applications, because I believe the location, the design as planned, and the fact that this is the last one in the system, and it's completing the block intent for the M-Crown that's present, does not militate against this notion that you're no longer open for private business. So that's the way I would respond to that. I absolutely get the concern. I do.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'll close by saying I understand your position. I understand the applicant's position. You'll also understand that I just sat through an application where we asked an individual developer to move a railing back because we were concerned about the precedents that it would create by creating a railing. And we're talking about an extraordinary precedent to set here. So that is my position, and it will continue to be mine.
I felt that, Robert, and I get it. I do.
Thank you, Ms. Wedderburn. That's it for me.
Mr. Robinson.
Hi. I kind of echo that last little bit, that, land use and landmarks seem to be a little bit too close together. Land use and housing should be closer together. As far as this goes, there has been a pretty substantial review in East New York that came out a couple of years ago, like last year, I think. about how, like, an overall plan. And I'd like to see that. Like, I don't want to see these little PowerPoint, like, mechanical, unhuman things. It's not what we want. I'm not an Ombi. I'm sorry, I'm not a Yimby or a NIMBY. I'm an Ombi. It seems to be only happening in my backyard. I live on 1022 Pacific Street. The development 2 doors away from me is maybe closing up sometime soon. The one across the street is going to start soon. There's one down the block. Why are you picking on us? I get that most of the people here are probably in landmark neighborhoods.
Not true.
But please don't take it out on us that aren't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Ms. Cool? Kaja?
Yeah, sorry. Needed to unmute first. And I have a suggestion for the committee, and actually two. So one is if we want to understand the environmental review process better, I want to suggest that we reach out to city planning and have someone from their environmental review division explain this to us, because with all due respect, Kevin, this was very confusing, the difference between no impact and with no action and with action. And so I think, and it would also, I think, behoove everyone if this comes from a somewhat neutral place. That's one. And then the second is actually a little bit related to that. I was wondering whether today is the time, or when do we as a committee set aside time to discuss this without the applicants, so that it doesn't become just a Q&A with the applicants team, but that we can actually have a conversation with each other about how we handle this. And I think that would make for a more productive discussion. That's all.
Thank you for your comments, Kaja. In regards to your first, that's something we can definitely seek out. In regards to the second, we're only receiving information at this point about the project, especially considering what the Councilwoman's stake has been on this. And with that, I noticed Andrew Wright was in the chat. Andrew, are you monitoring us, or would you like to impart new knowledge upon the committee?
No new knowledge. I'm just here to listen and hear, from Kevin and the applicants, and potential applicants, what their thoughts are and what their feedback was to the last meeting. So nothing to add, just here to listen.
Okay. So, Kaja, we certainly would not, and understand that we still have a subcommittee specifically dedicated to M-Crown, whereas we are having these discussions within the larger body of the land use meetings. So where any such meeting would be accommodated, i.e. reaching out to in the environmental review division of city planning, or any further information with the applicant would probably take, and you have to remember, we are observant of the public meetings law, so there would have to be an open meeting to have discussion. Does that answer your query?
If I can just respond, I think the applicant team should absolutely be present. I think it's just our style of meeting that would be helpful if we can respond to each other.
I would actually love for us to be able to meet in person so we could have these kinds of discussions, but we are at a loss to find space that would accommodate the size of our membership of this committee and the interest that such a meeting would generate.
What about right now?
Absolutely not at this moment. We always require, and here's the reason why. When we send out the agenda, we give a public notice as to what's going to be discussed. So in order for something to be discussed that would require or would invite larger participation by the community, we have to give adequate notice. That is one of the reasons why you have the agenda in the public information realm. Okay, do I see any more hands or any more questions regarding this particular presentation? Gib, go ahead.
Thank you, Sharon. I wanted to say, first of all, I was not at the last Land Use Committee meeting where this project was discussed tonight, so I apologize for that. I did have a chance to watch the video. I made some comments on the email list here, but I also just want to make some comments at this point, given the presentation that we have just heard. First off, I want to say that the community board actually has established a neighborhood vision for the M Crown area, and it's been the subject of 2 resolutions passed by the board. And I would like to suggest at some future land use meeting, we spend some time on reviewing what's in those resolutions for the benefit of folks who are perhaps newer to the committee and were not present at the time those resolutions were passed. But they do represent the community board's position on development in this area, and presumably would factor into to the community board's input into the neighborhood plan process that is being facilitated by the city council member. With respect to this project, I'd like to make a couple of points in this application. The first one is that it is true that the council member has stated that it's not preferable to have additional private applications. It's also the case that the council member has seen fit in the recent past to look favorably upon applications that deliver public benefits that are significantly greater than what would otherwise have been called for in the framework. In this case, let me talk about those other applications just for a second in general terms. The other applications, 840 Atlantic Avenue, which was in the previous council member's tenure, 870 and 1034, which are in the current city council member's tenure, all offered public commitments that were greater than they would have been asked to provide under the M Crown framework as articulated by the community board. Those projects, in exchange for providing greater public benefit, asked for greater density. And the community board entered into a dialogue about that and made the recommendations it did. This project is somewhat different. This project is proposing far greater public benefits than would be required under the M Crown framework, but is not requesting additional density. So what that means is if this application was not to proceed, and instead a neighborhood rezoning were to occur, the development on this lot would have fewer public benefits than are proposed by the applicants, far fewer, as a matter of fact. The applicant is proposing effectively 1 FAR of M Crown uses, where under the modified framework, which I will remind everyone has not actually been embraced publicly by the Department of City Planning, they would only be required to provide 0.25 FAR of M Crown uses. That's a very big difference. That's a 400% of the requirement difference, and it's worth considering. It's worth considering because jobs have been a very important component of what the community board has sought in M Crown. The reason the applicants, I'm sorry if and I don't speak for the applicants, I don't speak for the city council member or anyone other than myself, but I suspect the reason the applicants are proposing that level of benefit is because the cost basis they have for this project is low, given the length of time they've owned it. That's an opportunity that may not exist at the time that a neighborhood rezoning takes place. So this application presents significantly different opportunity than the ones that the community board has entertained before and which we found common ground with applicants on. I don't know if the application is presented is the be all and end all, is the ideal for the community board. But we don't yet have a neighborhood plan. That process will take some time. It could be subject to other vicissitudes of city government. We don't know. And I do believe that it makes sense for us in this context to have the conversation amongst ourselves and also with the applicants. I want to respond specifically to Mr. Callahan's comment that taking action on this application would represent some form of what he called extreme precedence. That's just simply not the case. The community board has articulated a vision for this area that's quite detailed, and this application exceeds it in terms of its performance according to the specifications set by the community board's resolution. It is not a question of precedence in that regard. Does that mean that other applications would potentially, have a foothold and want to come forward? Maybe, but it's very, very unlikely.
Is there a time limit on getting
the future applicants?
No, to answer your question, and Mr. Robinson, not to be rude, but you're out of order while someone else is speaking. It's the chair's responsibility to recognize speakers, and there are 2 speakers that would come before you. Mr. Vacconi, please go ahead.
So I'm sorry, I'm wrapping up, but it's very, very unlikely that other private applicants would be in the same position as this one. And I think it's very important that the committee understand that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Francoeur?
Yes, I know it's getting late, so I'll try to be quick, but hey, everybody. Yeah, I kind of just following up on Mr. Vacconi's point, and having listened to the meeting last week, it does seem that the applicant is trying to be responsive to some of the points that we brought up, and having seen other ULURP applications go through in other parts of the city, this does represent. There's a lot of, to be crude, the community board has a lot of leverage at this point in a ULURP process. It's a spot rezoning. The council members, I'm not representing the council member in any way, but it seems like the council member and their staff are kind of gauging what the community response to this application is, and the applicant's aware of that. And again, I'm a new member of the board, so I'm not familiar with the details of the MCRAM rezoning. But if, as the applicant and Mr. Vacconi have stated, that this rezoning and this development is in line with what the community has asked for in the MCRAM rezoning, plus more, I don't really see the harm in entertaining this, especially if we're going to get exactly what they're asking for, maybe a little bit less in what I don't exactly know the timeline for the MCRAM rezoning, but several years further down the line, I'd rather see the site developed sooner, more housing, and instead of an empty lot on Pacific Street. So I just kind of wanted to say, hey, I would be open to having more discussions in this committee and entertaining and having a dialogue to kind of understand what some of the concerns are, but that this can be a real dialogue, and there's a lot of opportunity for upside for the community. So just want to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Francoeur. Ms. Kuehl?
I have an observation and a question. Question is actually for the applicant. Have you discussed a certification date with city planning?
So the certification date would primarily be dependent on the closure of environmental review. So Kevin, what's the latest?
The last thing was traffic review, but the problem is it's like you leave things sitting for 3 months and then another project manager at city planning comes in. But I would say, reasonably, given the holidays are coming up, 3 months is where we're at.
Okay, so then my observation and comment is, as much as I just asked for a discussion in this committee, that maybe we should also be cautious of not spending our Thursday evenings about a project that's still very far down the pipeline. And by the time this would actually go into ULURP, we will be well into our own planning process. And then I have just one quick observation in response to Gibbs' comments. I too missed last meetings and only saw portions of it online. Below ground floor area is not FAR, so you can call this semantics or call it what it is. It's so the below grade spaces. You know, I like the proposal, I have to say, but I would caution us as a group to see it for what it is. It's a proposal to rezone this lot to R7A, and I forgot what else. And not pay so much attention to all the great ideas that Nadine has, which I like. But you also, if I remember correctly, started your presentation that you're now under pressure to keep the lot. And we're not the only ones with our lengthy discussions that may be a roadblock, as we just heard. So I think we should think of it as a rezoning, and all these public benefits, whether you provide them, that would be great. But we don't know that, right? You may be forced to sell it, and then, you know, whether it's a neighborhood rezoning or someone else going privately for this doesn't make a difference.
Chair, may I just respond to that in 60 seconds?
60 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for the comment. Just to be clear, when we talked about the fact that this is one of 25 lots, the only one of which is not zoned R7A on this frontage, there's also one important distinction between those other 25 lots. That's that this one would be tied to a benefits agreement. We had the benefit of Fifth Avenue Committee, a nonprofit who was part of the application process. We had the benefit of Evergreen, an industrial advocate who was part of the application process. We're willing to do the work to tie this property in a way that no other property that has been rezoned to R7A has been. While there are R7D properties that have been so tied, this is the only one where you guys know what you're going to get. What you see is what you get in the presentation, and we're willing to stand up to that. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crashes?
Well,
we're going to move on to Mr. Crashes. Mr. Crashes? Mr. Crashes?
Apologies. What I just said is that Kaya could actually just speak very briefly if she has something to say, and I'll also be very brief if she wants to go ahead of me.
60 seconds, Ms. Kill.
Yeah, okay, 60 seconds. Just in response to that, my thought on this is that the benefits agreement have gone wrong so many times. If someone from Fifth Avenue Committee is also on the call, since they're part of this applicant team, would be great to hear if the last two could be made transparent and publicly available. That would be super helpful. But given that they were the counter signatures to the last benefits agreement, I don't see how them now being part of the development team is increasing trust and transparency.
Thank you for the 60 seconds. And I would say that that discussion is a much broader discussion. So not to be talked about at this moment, but something to keep in the back of our minds. Mr. Robinson, do you have another question? I'm not calling on you. I'd like to lower your hand if you're not speaking right now.
It's actually his wife. We are on the call together.
Okay, next. Okay, so thank you. I need that distinction. Peter Crashes will speak next, then you, then give it Tony.
I just quickly wanted to say I really would like.
No, I said Mr. Crashes is next, then you, then Mr. Vacconi. Okay, thank you.
I'll be very brief, and I saw Gibbs' hand go up when Kaya mentioned about the most recent community benefits agreements not being public yet. And she's absolutely right, and he's about to say that in fact the Community Board 8 ones would be transparent. But actually, I think the point of the problem with the CBAs is something that we should be discussing on an ongoing basis. We don't have to have that tonight. I think the key thing here really for me is that we have about to start a public process. It's going to do substantially. It's going to be in a position to do substantially more public outreach than Community Board 8 was able to do. Even with all the hard work it did through the M-Crown process, we're going to be getting a lot more input from hopefully a much broader set of citizens than we have been able to so far. And our M-Crown values, the goals that we set, have been eclipsed, but in part because they were kind of they could have been stronger if the situation were different. So I think that I just want to say that if we're waiting for the community, the larger plan, we're actually going to see different sets of goals. And this is, we're talking about that's my expectation, but I don't know. But I would just say we're talking about here a very, very big change in the value of the property for this applicant. And so we've seen these lots flip. Even the adjacent lots have changed ownership once they've received rezoning. So I would just say it's in my view, a much better way to have each of these projects reflect the broader community's perspective if we actually try to put this within the same framework as the rest of the zone or the area that we'll be looking at in the neighborhood-wide rezoning. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Nix?
I just really want to second what Peter said, as I am, like, as you all know, like living right within the perimeter of where it's all happening. And I'm, again, not against change. It's inevitable, but I would like it to become like there to be a framework and not just individual proposal. I would like really to give Councilwoman Crystal Hudson like the chance to really look into it, because I am actually a neighbor, a person who lives on the block, and I hear small businesses like sharing their concerns. Today I invited 1024 26 Pacific Street to this meeting. He couldn't make it, but like people are starting to suffer. Small businesses are starting to suffer from the development. My landlord tried to buy me out right now because I live in a rent stabilized apartment and he wants me gone. So all I'm saying is, like, we need to start really also keeping in consideration the people who are actually here, have been here, call this their home, residents and businesses. And therefore, I really like it to be a cohesive plan, not just, and you get my point. Thank you for listening to me. And I also would love for Community Board 8 Land Use Committee to really have a side meeting to reconsider like what the parameters are of our M-Crown ideas. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nix. Gib?
So I want to say first, just to make sure this is understood, there is a framework for development in the M-Crown zone. The community board has been working on it for 7 years. Not everyone in this call has been participating for that length of time, but that is in fact the level of effort that has gone in. More than 300 people were engaged and participated in those meetings, and there are people at every different level of ownership in the problem. Everyone from residents, property owners, developers, advocates, elected officials. It's been a very thorough process, and it's been the subject of 2 resolutions by the community board. So when we hear things like the new neighborhood plan will have a different set of goals, and I don't know what community board everyone else is from, but this is a committee of Community Board 8, which has resolutions. It's not a freewheeling enterprise. The resolutions are something that we could discuss. We could even talk about amending them if we believe that it's necessary. And I believe that we should have that discussion here. But to say that we want to set those aside in favor of a process that hasn't begun and whose course we can't predict right now isn't logical in my mind. We will continue to have a stake in what happens to this part of the neighborhood as a committee, and this committee needs to be engaged fully according to what it's already developed and what's been approved by the community board. And anyone who suggests that something better or new will come out of this other process, or even that more people will be engaged, is at this point speculating. I'm sorry to put it in those terms, but that's the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Gib. Any more questions regarding this? We are talked out. What a rare occasion for the Land Use Committee.
May I just respond to Gib, Sharon, just quickly? I have my hand up.
60 seconds.
Yeah, Gib, I just wanted to say, I mean, because I apologize. I had a lot going on in my family, so I wasn't able to engage in the written conversations about this, but I did write down, because I was reading through this morning, the emails went back and forth about this application, talking about the meeting that I attended last month. And I think I just wrote down in comparing this application versus a community-wide plan, and it was, the words were anticipated, it appears to, probably, seems unlikely, seems likely. I mean, I think that we're talking about anticipating things. You're right, and I think that's a good thing because it allows for broader community participation. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, at this moment in time, and Andrew, I'm just checking back with you. Do you have anything to say? Any offerings of wisdom from the Councilwoman's office?
Nothing new. I'll just reiterate once again, the council member has said, and she stands by, that she will not support any private applications in this area until the neighborhood-wide rezoning is done. That hasn't changed. That will not change. She will stand by that, and we look forward to working with you all on this process in the coming months.
Thank you, Andrew. At this moment in time, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
And who's that from?
Kaya.
Kaya, thank you so much. Okay, we are adjourned, and I look forward to speaking to everyone again on the first Tuesday in December. Wow. Okay, everyone have a good evening.
You too. Good evening.
Thank